Donald Trump facing civil charges in New York, and the judge sitting there laughing and posing for the camera, almost smirking, taking off his glasses and saying to the world, wow, I better make this one look good. There's only so many times in your career as a judge when you get to run a communist show trial to try to take property away from other people in America. And Donald Trump, as usual, is the one who is facing the wrath from these people. He's not just facing the wrath of the judge, who's already issued some pretty adverse rulings on this, but also from Letitia Tishy James. And that was her name. She called herself Tish James for some reason some time ago. And so we just honor that memory. Tish James was in the courtroom, but she was behind the bar. We're going to ask ourselves why that is. Why wasn't she up there prosecuting this thing? And Trump had very good news that he just dropped that we'll get to at the very end of this segment once we get our bearings straight on exactly what was going on, because Trump was speaking all throughout the day, and we'll get into his reaction as well. But first, what was going on in the courtroom? You can see here the New York Attorney General, Tishy Letitia James, very excited about this prosecution. And there were not any cameras in the courtroom when the proceedings were happening. But for some reason, at some point, it seems like before the day's events got going, before court was actually in session on the record, that there was a cameraman in there. And take a look from MSNBC reports and watch what's happening. He's just scrolling around the room. You can hear them.
First look inside that courtroom. Our NBC cameras, the pool camera here, they gave us a chance to shoot. So now we all see what's happening inside there as this trial gets underway. There's DA James, yep, right, sitting there. Actually, not at the front table. Wow. That's kind of interesting.
No, she's not trying the case, so she's sitting behind her attorneys.
Yeah, the Attorney General there, Tishy James. Thank you so much. And there you see President Trump, the former president, I should say, next to his attorney. And that's Chris Kise, who we expect to make the opening statements here. And then this,
Judge Engoran.
I guess, is Judge Engoran, and he is awaiting the start of this trial.
Yeah, so cameraman gets off him real quick, all right? There is so much to unpack in this clip. I can't even begin to start, so we're going to do it. But take a look at this. This is a very curious thing. New York Attorney General Letitia James, she was the one who ran this case. She ran for office promising to prosecute Donald Trump. And we've played the clip of her many times, okay? She actually has facial spasms when she speaks about this. She said, I'm going to prosecute this illegitimate president. And her face was all contorted like the Sith in the Star Wars movies. It's weird, like it's contorted by the darkness, the dark side, right? Here, what you can see is that she is not at the table. She is bringing her other people to the front of the table. She's got a bunch of attorneys here who are not her, people we've never heard of, who are actually prosecuting the case. And she is sitting back behind the bar. There she is, right? And this is where the public sits, okay? So attorneys cross the bar and the public sits behind the bar. And so who are all these people up here who are actually prosecuting the case? My question is, what type of involvement does Tishy Letitia James even have in this case? Because she's not even sitting kind of in the second row of the attorneys. She's not sitting even second chair. These are, interns or whomever's behind there. And so not even up front. And, the media parades her around as though she's like this powerhouse legal scholar, this thinker who's going to deliver justice. And as we're going to hear from her in a minute, she does take the stage in front of the cameras when the media is out there and they want to hear from her and she needs to deliver a little stupid 60-second soundbite about something. But why is she not prosecuting the case? Now, we've been seeing the same thing with Big Fannie Willis. Fannie Willis will sign the important documents, but is she going to actually be out there in front, or are they just front people for some other cabal of, in this case, maybe New York City lawyers, NYC law lawyers, or Harvard Law. They've got these guys who are, who knows where they're from or whatever, but they are really the people who are behind this. They're really doing the heavy lifting. And Letitia James and Big Fannie Willis, they're the people who are just the front people, right? Who are actually out there not doing much of anything other than just talking to the cameras. So she's there. Now the judge, right? Now, first of all, Tishy, as you can see her, she's back here now, and she's like stalking him like a psychopathic ex, right? You've seen this look, my friends. We've all been there. You know what I'm saying? And like you turn around and that person's looking at you like this. You're like, yo, somebody get a restraining order on this. All right. What is this? Like lusting, lunging, staring. And, the cameraman's just catching what he can. But look at this woman. And we've known she was a little bit, I don't know what is going on in her mind. Her face spasms and stuff like that. But it's like she's got a stare from one of those psychopaths in a movie, I mean, quite frankly. So this is another scene of the judge. Now, this is another wild scene. And so my question is, why was the camera allowed in here? Just to get a quick synopsis of what was going on. But this judge then poses for this camera. He takes his glasses off and smiles for this. In the media, and he knows it's not the right thing to do. You know how you know that? Is because he does this little whatever. He does his whatever move. Whatever. And you know who he's looking at when he does that? What table is he looking at over there? Is that the Trump table, the defense table? Or is he looking at the government's table, okay? Tishy James's table. He's looking at Tishy James's table, right? He's looking at the prosecutors who are doing the same thing. They're giggling like schoolgirls over there. And he's giving him this little look like, hey, it's a circus here. We're in it together. Look at that smirk, man. This is a judge in America. A judge in America. Impartial, no bias, none of this stuff. You can read it on his face. Doesn't even have to say anything. And he is just busted. The court, like, I guarantee you, we can't see on the other side of this camera. We can't see on the other side, right? But the prosecutors are sitting there laughing because we saw them doing that earlier. Like, watch it. Look at her giggling. It's totally rigged. We know what the outcome is. It's all a show trial. We've got the president. Tishy is salivating, trying to hold back her facial spasms, and they're all looking at Trump. And so when the camera then pans over to the judge, he looks, look, she's still smirking. She's still laughing right here. She's laughing, kind of making comments. And the judge looks at her, looks over there, and just says, yep, whatever. Why not? This only happens once. This only happens once. I better enjoy it. And so what's often fun to do is watch these without the audio, right? You can actually just see what's happening. And so we'll let that play through one more time, and you can see her. There's Tish, just scowling, staring. Even her friend to her right is like, whoa, do you see that little activity there? Her friend looks at her and then it's like, whoa, okay, she's got like a Mitch McConnell going on right now. Somebody needs to shake it loose. Shake it loose. So strange behavior all around. And this is what a courtroom now looks like as they drag Trump in. Now, Trump showed up and people were concerned about this. Was he actually going to be there? You can see to his left is Alina Abba, and she's in the house. And my understanding is that she gave some opening arguments today as well. But there's Trump. There's our smirking, laughing judge who just loves what he's doing. Hey, hold on a minute. And you can see what the courtroom looks like. So now that we have that and we know what we're dealing with, let's see what Tishy actually said when she was out there. She was sitting behind the bar. She was not actually participating in this case, but she sure was involved enough to show up and talk to the cameras.
Donald Trump and the other defendants have committed persistent and repeated fraud. Last week, we proved that in our motion for summary judgment. Today, we will prove our other claims. My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law. And it is my responsibility and my duty and my job to enforce it.
To what? Sit behind the bar?
The law is both powerful and fragile. And today in court, we will prove our case. I thank you all for being here. And again, justice will prevail.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay. So she's out there real tough, real, powerful New York AG going after Donald Trump. She doesn't even sit in front of the bar. She sits in the back of the courtroom, behind the bar, on her own accord. For whatever reason, don't know why she did that to herself, but she's out there. She does like to speak in certain contexts, but maybe not when it's actually time to do some legal work. She'd rather pass that off to people who are competent. So this is Jason Miller on Trump's team. He came out, was also making a statement. Here's what he had to say.
Letitia James.
Gosh, sorry about that.
Getting Trump. That's what this is about. Election interference. Letitia James, Alvin Bragg,
Tishy,
Fani Willis,
Fanny,
Merrick Garland, and Joe Biden. This is designed to do nothing else but stop President Trump as he's leading by 10 points in the general election. We have a renegade judge here who's ignoring ruling of the appeals court. President Trump's assets are worth way more than what the court would have you believe. But this is all about 2024. Do not get it confused.
All right, so very simple statement, absolutely right. Total political witch hunt. And we were even asking ourselves, who's the complainer? And look, Letitia, whatever you want to say about her, you can spend a lot of time unpacking the case, and we're going to hear Trump talk about valuation and all of that stuff, okay? You can do that, and you can argue the merits and whatever. In my opinion, I don't think that, obviously, Trump would be under this scrutiny if he had not been president and if he were not rerunning for president, because we know this because Tishy is on record saying that she was running for office for the sole purpose of prosecuting Trump for bringing all of this, which in my mind delegitimizes the entire thing. Right? She had no real mindset to start an investigation from scratch. She was a dog in search of a bone. Trump was it. And so she was going to go find it, and she did. Now, that scene, obviously, not a good scene. And it is, you know, from our perspective, if you don't like to see communists take property away from anybody, any citizen, and you don't like to see bureaucrats try to, you know, wreck orderly administration of capitalism because they hate their political opponents. What you see is very upsetting to watch Trump, who shows up, you know, and has to sort of play this stupid game with all these clowns. It's an uneasy feeling. But let me just be clear, right? I do believe that there are consequences for this, right? What these people are doing when they laugh with glee, when all these lefties are on Twitter like, yeah, take his business, right? Whatever. They're playing with forces I don't even think they recognize. Not, you know, I'm not talking about like people getting angry. I mean, this is like you're siding on the side of property rights or no property rights, you know, and you're violating those universal precepts of, you know, free exercise and your ability to exist as a human, right? To take the reason property is so valuable and so such an important concept is because you take your life and you take your time and you mix your labor with the world, with other resources, and you create something of value and you exchange that value for money. And so that mixing of your life is imbibing your life into that property, which you're exchanging for money. So when communists come in and they take that away, it's as though they're taking away human life, right? They're taking away human creation. And it is a demonic thing that they do, and they love to do it, and they get gleeful from it because it's a power satiating experience for them. And ultimately that power is contorting, and I think it is something that is a dark energy that they're trying to accumulate. My point is that when they create these environments and they thrive amongst themselves in it, and they, you know, dunk on each other, dunk amongst themselves, it will have consequences. And Turley explains this, and here is what he said about this. Jonathan Turley.
There's a camera in that courtroom. Was that supposed to be, or would they just be simply ushered out when we're gabbled to order?
Well, you're more likely to have cameras in state proceedings, and so it's up to the discretion of the judge. And quite frankly, I'm not too sure that both parties would want this. I think that Trump views this, the optics of this, as working to his advantage. Look, people looking at this live picture right now will be either filled with rage or they will be thrilled. And that's the problem, is that, you know, you have James now being shown in the background, you've got Trump in the foreground, and it fulfills the narrative on both sides. Trump is likely right. I mean, he's being shown in a sort of tag team series of prosecutions and civil lawsuits where one prosecutor tags another. They're all insisting on these trials occurring before the election.
Yep, and they're all being done to specifically target Donald Trump. And so I think Turley's right about this. There will be consequences. I think that people will recognize what's happening here. And we were talking about this morning on our members-only stream about Newton's third law, right? And for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Whenever one object exerts a force on a second object, the second object exerts an equal and opposite force on the first. And this is just a physics term, but I thought it made sense, right? They push, and you find this in martial arts too, right? If somebody's pushing on you, you sort of use that force or you redirect it, and it causes another reaction that you can take advantage of. And I think that that's exactly what's happening here. I mean, Trump showed up intentionally to put his name on this and to stand up, and he came out and he spoke very forcefully, and we'll go through some of it to hear his take on what happened today. And the audio is a little bit rough because there's so many cameras, but let's see what we can take from it.
This is a critical trial put forward by the Attorney General. We have murders going all over the city, all over the state at a record level. It's an epidemic, and they waste their time on this with banks that were very happy. They got all their money back. They weren't defrauded. I've been defrauded. With a judge that ruled that a building, that a property is worth $18 million, when in fact it's worth over $1 billion, probably $1.5 billion. It may be worth anything. When many properties which I sold are worth much more than were listed in the financial statements, by double and triple. What do you have to do? And we're wasting our time on this trial with a Democrat judge from the clubhouses. It's a disgrace. They ought to look for the murderers and the killers that are all over New York killing people, and the violent crime that's being committed in our city and our state is disgraceful, and we're going to be here for months with a judge that already made up his mind. It's ridiculous. He's a Democrat judge, he's an operative, and it's ridiculous. Other than that, things went very well.
What are you going to have for lunch? Will you come back after lunch, Mr. Trump?
Probably.
All right, so that was Trump after the lunch break, right? Breaking for lunch, came out and said this judge is a Democrat judge. And, you know, it's a very provocative thing to be saying outside the judge's courtroom, to walk outside the courtroom and say, this judge is a psycho Democrat. You know, it's like, wow. And it is, you know, the tensions there are very, very high, obviously. And so we're curious about, you know, how the rest of the day was going to go. We do have a, you know, good update from Trump. He came out, of course, the clock just struck on the East Coast. And so we've got an update here on the statute of limitations. But I wanted to share this clip before we get there from Trump explaining the valuation. They took another break later on in the day, and Trump came out and he's really walking us through exactly what this is about. And they're saying, you know, Trump is engaged in fraud. Long story short, takeaway. Trump said our properties are worth $100 million, they're worth $10 million. Wait a minute. You said that they're worth $90 million more than what they actually are worth. Therefore, you defrauded the banks, the insurance companies, because you got loans on that inflated value and blah, blah, blah. Right. And so it's technical. It's math. We skip most of that here on this channel. But the point is, Trump is now going to come out and explain why their valuations are just subjective. Right. They just picked numbers that they liked. And one of those numbers was $18 million for Mar-a-Lago. And if you ever looked at Mar-a-Lago, you know, we were joking, like we could probably buy, like we, you know, could we maybe fund to buy an $18 million Mar-a-Lago? Because I think you could probably turn that into, like, if you could generate 18 million, you could probably sell it for 500 or whatever it's worth, right? It's like lunacy. So it is one of the most prestigious properties on the planet. And for $18 million, like, give me a break. So here is Trump now explaining what his take is on valuation.
As I say, murders are going on as you stand here, and they're wasting everybody's time for many months on this case where banks got paid a fortune. Loan money got paid money back. Didn't even need their money. We built a great company. We have to go through this. So this just broke, but before I discuss that, why are we trying a case that the appellate division of New York State has just ruled recently that
their feed,
we
not
won
ours.
80% of our case. And this judge refuses to acknowledge the ruling, which is very plain for all to see. We won, as you know, it had to do with Ivanka, and it had to do with other things. It had to do with the statute of limitations, where they wanted to go back to 200 years ago, 500 years ago. It was limited, very much limited, and it amounted to about 80% of the case was won by us in the appellate division. And this rogue judge, a Trump hater, the only one that hates Trump more is his associate up there, his person that works with him. And she's screaming into his ear on almost every time we ask a question.
That's interesting.
Disgrace. You want to know the truth? It's a disgrace. So this rogue judge refuses to acknowledge the fact that we won 80% of this case in the appellate division.
Okay.
Including statute of limitations.
Okay, so we're going to come back to that because Trump has an update for us after this, right? They go back into court. He comes back out with an update.
On the statute of limitations, you have a period of time. He wants to go back so far that nobody's ever even heard of such a ridiculous thing. So we won the case in the appellate division, and this judge refuses to acknowledge the appellate division, meaning he's got contempt for his own court system. Nobody's ever seen that before, where he refuses to even talk about it or acknowledge it. And the Attorney General is she's a corrupt person, a terrible person, driving people out of New York, number one. That's number one. Number two, it just came out few minutes ago where Palm Beach County, the people that do this, agree with us 100%, and they say the judge is wrong.
In Florida,
the judge is wrong in his ruling. $18 million. He valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million, and it's worth $1 billion, maybe $1.5 billion.
Wow.
And you saw where various properties that we have that are valued in the financial statements, which is totally subject to the clause that you've all been hearing about doing buyer beware, as they call it. But this just came out. Error in New York civil fraud case against Trump is flagged by industry insiders who say valuation of Mar-a-Lago cited by Judge is based on a misunderstanding of basic real estate practice. So they're saying the judge has misunderstood basic real estate practice. I say they're wrong about that. He didn't misunderstand it. This is a rigged court.
Yeah. He knew what he was doing.
He's put there to do a job on Trump. Now, this comes from highly respected officials in Palm Beach County. Also, apparent mistake by Judge Engoran surfaces in the use of a Palm Beach County appraisal of Mar-a-Lago that, an expert says, is detached from the true value of the property. Now, I don't know the people that we're talking about in Palm Beach County, but they saw this egregious trial, this horrible, horrible trial going on, while at the same time people are being murdered right outside of the streets, and nothing happens to those people that do the murdering. They go after Trump. So this was just released by Palm Beach County, that the judge in this case is wrong. And by the way, he's talking about them. So they're explaining to him that he's wrong. Here's another one, just came out. New York v. Trump could set precedent for the use of New York's overweening executive law. One doesn't have to be a lawyer to see the danger to anyone doing business in the Empire State.
Right.
Anybody that does business in New York State is crazy.
You're gonna everyone's gonna flee.
You have a radical left attorney general like Tishy James, who's a disgrace to our country.
Yeah, just think about it, right? It's not just Trump. Trump is just the current defendant right now, just the current victim of an ideological partisan prosecutor like Tishy. But it's not going to just be Trump. Okay, it'll be the next person, or it'll be the next industry, right? How long before they come after some entity that doesn't comply with DEI requirements, right? Well, they're being racist and offensive in New York City, and so now they're committing, some sort of violation of the commerce, whatever, right? They just find reasons to go penalize and punish the entities that they don't like. It's a climate change business. You're not complying, you're polluting or whatever, right? And your property's just ours now. And you've got the judges who comply. You've got an electorate there who's like championing Tishy James. They're like, yes, queen, go get him. What are you talking about here? He's seizing property. Any business in their right mind would just divest, go reincorporate somewhere else, go pick a different place and get the hell out of New York.
Who got elected on the fact that she's going to take down President Trump. We're going to take him down. She knew nothing about me.
Spasms.
But she got elected on that basis. And we have others likewise. Take a look at what's going on in Georgia. Take a look at Jack Smith. Take a look at these people. This is called election interference, and worse than that. Really much worse than that.
Way worse.
And you don't get much worse than election interference, especially we're talking presidential election.
It's
of 2024.
It's harassment.
So,
by your government.
This judge should change his ruling because Palm Beach County said he was totally wrong, and he was ruling based on them. He ruled we didn't even have a chance to testify. I got a call last week, sir, we lost part of the case. I said, the trial didn't even start. The trial starts, I guess, today. He ruled that we lost a big part of the case because he's a Democrat club politician. He's a Democrat operative, and he's a disgrace to people that call themselves judges. And I hope my lawyers go in, and I hope they fight him very hard, because this guy's getting away with murder. And his clerk should not be allowed to be in his ear on every single question. You take a look at what's happening with her. She hates Trump more than he does. So that's where it is. We have 80% of this trial has been won. In June, they came down, the end of June, with a decision, very powerful decision. And it said, on statute of limitations and just about everything else, did you say approximately 80% of the trial? Attorneys, is that right? Approximately 80% of the trials won. He refuses to acknowledge his own appellate division. And I think it's a disgrace to our country.
We'll see. We're going to come back to that.
Because if you don't fight, our country's just going to go down the tubes. This is election interference. This guy's a highly partisan person. And we can't let this stuff happen. So you should ask yourselves as professionals, I have a lot of respect for you, not all of you, but a lot of you. Why is it that he didn't honor the decision of the appellate? And by the way, I believe it was a unanimous decision, right? It's a 5-0 decision, unanimous decision. And he said, I'm not going to honor it. Let's go to trial. This is a judge that should be disbarred. This is a judge that should be out of office. This is a judge that some people say could be charged criminally for what he's doing. He's interfering with an election, and it's a disgrace. Thank you very much.
Mr. Trump, why do you want to be here in person today?
Because I want to watch this witch hunt myself.
Yes.
I've been going through a witch hunt for years. But this is really now getting dirty between Jack Smith and between all of these DOJ people helping them along. This is a pure witch hunt for purposes of interfering with the elections of the United States of America. It's totally illegal. This judge should be disbarred. He shouldn't be allowed to be a judge. Thank you.
Yeah, he'll probably get a promotion, right? They'll probably put him on the bench on federal court or something like that. So Trump is absolutely right? He shows up there. He's like, I'm going to look you in the eyes. Or if you're going to do this to me, look me in the eyes and do it. And so he showed up there and he delivered a great statement. And I think he's absolutely right? The facts are irrelevant. The law is irrelevant. It's all about just a political prosecution. It's a show trial. It's a show court. Letitia James ran on prosecuting him, which in my mind makes the entire thing illegitimate from day one. And here we are. And so Trump came out, explained how obviously an $18 million valuation on Mar-a-Lago is one of the dumbest things you could ever possibly imagine. And it was something that he was right about. Now, we'll fast forward through the updates and boom, we have a nice takeaway from Trump. He came out and made this announcement. You can see it's at the close of the day in New York. And here's what Trump says, making an announcement about the statute of limitations. And before we listen, statute of limitations is the concept that the government has to bring charges or pursue causes of action. This is a civil case within a certain period of time. If you don't bring the charges, if you don't bring the complaint within a certain period of time, you lose the opportunity to do that. The reason for that is we don't want evidence to spoil. Witnesses lose their memories, blood results go bad, evidence might disappear, drugs might decompose, DNA evidence gets less testable, whatever it is, right? So you have this rule that says you got to bring your complaint within a certain period of time. Here's Trump.
That was very good. That last 5 minutes was outstanding because the judge essentially conceded that the statute of limitations that we won at the Court of Appeals is in effect. Therefore, about 80% of the case is over. I was going to come out and say that,
right on.
As you know, we're not entitled to a jury, which is pretty unusual in the United States of America. So we think it's very unfair that I don't have a jury. But the judge's last statement was very fair. And if I read it right, I'll let perhaps one of the lawyers speak to it. But Cliff, maybe you'll speak to it if you would. But the way I interpret that and the way everyone else in the room seems to interpret that is that the statute of limitations is a very real thing in this country.
It is.
Should be. That would be about 80% of this case would be over. Could somebody speak to that, please?
And so remember, we had a similar situation with E. Jean Carroll, who actually allegedly got, attacked in a Bergdorf's, and the actual R attack, she was not found victorious on that charge. Trump won that. And so what they've done is they've extended the survivor statute of limitations in New York, right? They created a change in the law to give her a new claim. And now they're saying that the AG, in this case, should have brought the other charges prior to 2014 a long time ago. they expired. You waited too long, Tishy.
Cliff, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So based on the judge's comments, at the end of the trial today, it would appear that he is agreeing that all of the transactions that closed prior to 2014 are now out of the case.
Wow.
Which is about 80% of the case.
Wow.
And it's also something that we won on appeal, but was not accepted by this court, but now seems to be accepted by this court.
All right, it sounds to me like Trump was totally vindicated. Okay, he came out, he said, this is how it should have been found. There is a statute of limitations, and went back in. Attorneys made some arguments. Trump comes back out. 80% of the case is gone, right? Because Letitia James, she's got all of her charges from 2012 and 2013 and 2014, and beyond that, probably way before that, and all of that is gone.